To begin with, I want to take issue with Lila's emendation, one of Lila's emendation. Have given it more thought, um, and now I'll uh, share the screen and show where it is. Where is the screen sharing?
Do we have the autographed copies of Pseudo Dionysius?
Uh,
Or
which courses?
the original? I know it's late antique, so maybe that's not as.
Oh, the original, which by his own hand, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh no, I frankly I can't even think of any manuscript from that time uh, extant written by the author's own hand.
Mm.
Maybe I'm missing something, but that would be quite astonishing. Yeah, I think the earliest manuscript we have is 9th century. Which is preserved by thanks to Scott Eriugena. There's quite an interesting story about this one manuscript, but that is pretty early for such uh, for yes, that's the earliest manuscript, but it's not certainly not by the author's own hand. Yeah. Obviously, right? So anyway, so I want to let's look. Do you see this sentence, the last sentence on the page? Tihartis hyperlogon kanun keusin aftin hyperusiotitus. Do you see it?
Mhm.
Right. So you see this in angular brackets. As I think you know that this means an emendation. Well, plainly, the editor, namely in this case Salvador Lilla, he inserted it here, and it makes sense, but not quite, I would say, because you see the way he inserted it, it makes all this phrase.
Mhm.
Υπερλόγων καινούν και αυτήν, right? From here to here, it
Mhm.
qualifies what noun as it stands. Let's
Well,
recall
it
it.
looks like the you've got the instrumental dative agnosia, which is then the ignorance of, and then it's of the beyond beingness, and it's
Well, not quite, because tis is a genitive case,
yeah.
right?
Doesn't it go with huperusia tetas?
Exactly. So it is all this phrase hyperlogon kenun keusien aftin is uh, in attributive position
Mm-hmm.
qualifying hyperosiotitos,
Mm-hmm.
right? So as Lila translates it, and I guess you have Lila's book, so you can double check. Uh, uh, in his translation is to the ignorance of that superessentiality which transcends speech, mind, and even essence. In other words, which transcends speech, mind, and even essence, qualifies supraessentiality. You see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just want maybe let's double check. Does it how in your impression is it does anything like you feel not right about it?
Well, um, usually in Aristotle, you wouldn't translate ousia as essence, you would translate as substance.
Oh yeah,
essence
that's
is
a minor.
Athena.
Yes, yes, that's a minor. Yeah, what I mean, I will tell. Okay, I'll give it away. You see, it's hyperousia naftin hyperosiotis. It's tautology. It's just so on this reading, this qualification hyper usian aftin is superfluous because it's already by its very name hyperosiotis is hyperusia, right? By its name tells it, right? Do you follow me?
Yeah. Is there any issue with just missing an article for Huperusiotetos? So,
Exactly. That's what I think. I think he would do better, namely Lila, if he would place this teeth which he inserted, right? If he had inserted it before hyperusiotitos, right? And then all this uh, phrase hyper ta aftin would qualify not hyperusiotitos, but agnosia,
can
right?
I can I
So then
venture?
it would translate something like to the ignorance of supraessentiality, which ignorance transcends speech, mind, and even essence. Do you
Uh,
see how?
what do you think about this idea? This is just a shot in the dark. What if the error? What if we were to amend to looking at the word outain
Mm-hmm.
to delete the alpha upsilon because the scribe confused it with the alpha nu on the previous word, and then amend the tain to tes, and so we could have a tes superusiot tetos, deleting the alpha.
Yes, that's possible, of course, but you see, that's uh, the next level of which requires careful weighing the pros and contras in terms of manuscripts.
Mhm.
But here because I'm not, of course, I don't have this qualification of an editor uh, of such caliber as Leela. So I trust, but since he already made this emendation with teeth, so I rely that this is, in his view, uh, legit, so to speak. But
But
then,
in the apparatus, it does list autes as a variant for outain. Um,
yes, yes, and some editions, if we look at in say Zuchla's edition, I think she has it
mhm,
very different altogether. Uh, uh, I now have it on the screen. You can see that she has aftis,
mhm.
and she puts a period after agnosia, and she has agnosia even in nominative case. So this place, this passage is a bone of contention somewhat. You
Mhm.
can check with there's an earlier edition which is in Patrologia Graeca. I don't remember how that one goes. So you can at least you can see how already Lila's edition differs from Zuchla's, right?
It's interesting. I don't have enough experience with the author to have a sense of.
Well, in this case, there are two factors, right? So, and uh, there's this rule of thumb, first of all, that the more difficult reading is better, but it shouldn't be made into a dogma, as already you may learn from the editors themselves. It's kind of a rule of thumb. I mean, so the reasoning is that if a scribe makes a mistake, it's more probable that they mistake a reading which is more difficult to understand, to make sense of. They mistake it for a reading of which it's easier to make sense of. So if we have a discrepancy in manuscripts, then we should prefer a reading which is more difficult to make sense of, although it gives us as interpreters and readers a hard time, but we need to buy it. But this shouldn't be taken to the extreme, because sometimes a reading, a more difficult reading is so difficult that it becomes really improbable. So anyway, so this rule is not written in stone. So I'm just giving an example how so, and then the editor, an editor is weigh the evidence of the manuscript, the families of manuscripts, and so and Zuchla is, of course, both Lila and Zuchla are high level kind of their competence. I cannot doubt. So, but still they do disagree. You see, but the only reason I dare to help, so to speak, Lila, although he passed away, so he will not hear me. He passed away even before this was published. It's posthumous publication. So because he already made this emendation, so I think given this, it just would make more sense to move this teeth to stand immediately before the Hyperusiotetus, and then the sense would be much richer. So this hyperlogon kenun keusien would qualify agnosia, the agnosia of, so not only it is agnosia of superessentiality, but this agnosia, this unknowing itself, is above logos nun and even essence. So it is then on this reading, it would be super essential unknowing of super essential in the sense that hyper usien aftin, unknowing. Well, as I said, as a ignorance or unknowing, then unknowing of superessentiality, which unknowing transcends speech, mind, and even essence. In other words, which unknowing is superessential itself, right? So I think this makes it, it retains the paradox, right? But it makes it still, but avoids tautology. I think tautology is, when possible, we need to give just somehow to try to construe it so that there is no tautology. Because tautology is not, well, paradox is great, but tautology is not so great. Anyway, that's my suggestion about this. So so now we began to read this this scholium, and I as a little homework, I suggested that you think about beginning with the first clause to think how to translate it so that it makes sense as an inference. So would you try to translate this first clause, first sentence?
If substance is said contrary to being or in addition to being?
Well, that's what that's the crux.
Yeah.
right? So try to think among the possible meanings of para with accusative. So para is used with different cases, right? But we need here it's obviously with accusative. So
Mm-hmm.
among these meanings, which LSJ give and Lampe, if you wish, you
Mm-hmm.
have Lampe, right? Dictionary. Do you want me to send you?
I
It's
think
a
and I
patristic.
used the Logéon website, which I think has.
Okay, maybe it's fine. Okay, so think among all this meaning, the one uh, uh, which would make this a logical inference. There's a major premise, the minor premise, and the conclusion, right?
Mhm.
So do you have, do you want to try it, or do you want to tell what I think? I'm here
Um,
to please you, basically.
so if substance is said, and I'll pause or I'll hold a para in abeyance for a moment.
Hmm.
But being uh, outlines the concept of some kind of paragoge is carrying past or going past.
Well, I suggest production last time.
Reduction.
No, production.
Oh, production. Oh,
Yeah.
um,
Also, you can look at the meaning of paragogy.
mhm.
Can you? I mean, that's you see. Sometimes
Yeah.
it helps.
Um, LSJ also has leading astray for paragoge.
Right. That's of course yes. So there's variety of options, but that's what constitutes non-trivial. This is a non-trivial aspect of interpreting, right?
Mhm.
So to find uh, uh, so
Well, I guess the conclusion is less difficult to translate. He wants to translate, or wants to say, substance would not properly be said in the case of God.
yes, yes, that's a very good way of reasoning. So now working backwards
Yeah.
from the conclusion, can you think um, of the well? If it's difficult, I can tell you what I think because I
Um,
yeah, but anyway,
can you
whatever.
translate, can hypographe be translated something like imply or connote?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Actually, Cole brilliantly translated with underwrites. I don't know how brilliant it is, but because
Oh,
I
very literal.
frankly, my English fails me. What does underwrite mean in English?
Well, that's sort of literal because hupa is under and graphe is right.
Yes, yes, but
So
it looks like it might work. So what does underwrite mean?
usually you use it in the context of financial matters and something like guaranteeing some other thing. Like if you underwrite something underwrites the loan, then it sort of guarantees it's true.
Oh, I see.
To be honest,
Uh,
I don't know if that would work in this.
yeah, I think okay, maybe it's better. What uh, you see, Cole probably he likes this, not save himself looking into the dictionary, but sometimes it gives more work. Uh, subscribe. Uh,
I think I don't know, maybe like indicate can be a meaning that it has.
uh, from the context, I would say imply would be the best. If I, as I look, or indicate, I would, but LSJ give indicate. which I think is the best from what it offers. The best in terms of the context, right? Uh, uh, but again, it all makes sense if you have any idea how this conclusion can be reached by something like these two premises, right?
Para with accusative can also mean beyond, right?
Right, but what you see, the conclusion is about ousia, but the second premise is about ine,
Mhm.
right? This is possible only if one can speak of ousia in the same sense in which one speaks about ine, right?
Mhm.
In other words, only if they're somehow interchangeable,
Mhm.
right? So why does he speak about ousia here? Because he comments on the term hyperousiotitus, which is precisely in our passage, hyperousiotitus agnosia. So uh, he and what is it? Uh, so uh, um, so why is the divine or the divinity or even God as this John of Chrysopolis interprets it, why is it super essential? In other words, why it's above ousia? That's what this sentence uh, claims to be explaining.
Well,
Uh,
can I ask you, like, I guess I guess because I spent a lot of time with Neoplatonism, I'm tempted to project those ideas, but in a Neoplatonist context, the problem is um or what is the one is a perfect unity, and if you apply ousia to it, then you violate its unity.
right.
And
That's of course, yeah, but that's a forbidden how you call it in sports, a forbidden device, a forbidden
a
he
foul,
ah
a foul, maybe.
yeah, right. I don't know this word, but I trust. Yeah, so something like which yeah, you cannot, because he is a Christian, he claims to give a Christian doctrine, so he cannot come from this Neoplatonist framework where the mind, so the nous is equivalent, not equivalent, but how to put it, a
Well, I'm
correl.
thinking of in the Neoplatonist one as a kind of well, is it the case that he um uses the Neoplatonist ideas as if they're a kind of monotheistic system where the one is the one God?
Yeah, well, yes, but here, especially here, we're dealing with the scholium, which is one of the tasks of which is to help to integrate this within the church.
Hmm.
So it cannot refer to or rely upon Neoplatonist doctrine as something already established, which his reader would trust and rely on, and then and as some authority, right? So he needs to argue differently to justify this, and that is what is achieved here. Okay, do you want me to say how I understand it, or do you
Oh,
want?
oh yeah, yeah. I'd like to
Okay,
hear.
so I think it's pretty straightforward. So, uh, well, but not quite, but at least the train of thought. First of all, para here, this major premise. serves to establish interchangeability between toine and ousia, being and essence. And that's pretty legit, even already in Plato. So ousia is basically beingness. It's in for the Greek ear originally, it's emerged the term ousia as meaning something like beingness. So para here, para with accusative, you can look up more exactly, but it can mean something like alongside or on the par with. So, in other words, ousia, when you where you say ousia, you can say being. That's basically what it says, the major premise, right? So, and then the minor premise is the being indicates, if we translate like this, or infers, uh, uh, a concept of some production.
Does he
But
mean does he mean the being has been produced or it is producing something?
well, that's a good question, and that's, I would say, something I wanted to discuss. So, why one might think this minor premise stands? But let's before that just assume that it's true, just to see the pure logic of it. So, so so ousia is said interchangeably with being, but being implies the thought of some production. Therefore, one could not, or one might not speak, or rather speak of ousia in the case of God, in the proper sense, kyrios, in the proper sense of the word. Okay? So now is it clear that so now we so in other words, in the case this would be true, right, if in the case of God we cannot speak of its being as production somehow, whereas normally we speak of being, the talking of being implies or indicates some thought, a thought of or concept of some production. Now, what might this mean? In what sense uh, uh, he might think or might want us to accept that this minor premise? So on the surface, we may think that, well, first of all, of course, there is God the Creator in Christian frame of mind. But then we might think when God created things, according to this story, right, in Genesis, they just exist. So it looks like there is production and then existence, which as such does not imply any production, right? So at least this gave me a pause. I had to think it through because such an objection comes to mind,
You mean
doesn't
that
it?
why didn't God create earlier rather than later?
No, no, just why say you know the sun exists.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was created according uh, to Genesis, right? God created the sun.
Right.
But once God created the sun exists. Now, so the sun came into being, and but then it exists, and it just is. What I mean, it just is. So why
Right.
does its existence implies production as such, existence as such?
It's a little puzzling to me, I guess, because I think in terms of Plato, Plato would not worry about this with ta Enai. He would think this is the problem for ta Gignestai or ta Ginomenon.
Right,
Because for
right.
Plato, the sun is not it, you wouldn't apply Enai to the sun. The sun would only be Gignetai, um, like all sensible things.
Well, but
Yeah.
so it's in a constant so it's in a constant change, right?
Right.
Well, but paragagi is something more than just a change.
Well,
Mm.
I'm curious. Well, could I try the idea? Like, I was just reading ahead in the next line. If we were to translate as you suggested, if substance is said alongside being, and being uh, indicates the thought of something misleading, and then the misleading part would be what he goes on to say in the next one, like Passis Garusias, well, God lies beyond all substance. Um,
Uh, but what would be the logic of this? So
oh, the logic. I'm wondering.
of the
I'm not.
argument. So if this, but this, it's like if all people are mortal, but the Socrates is a human being, then Socrates is mortal. You see, that's how.
I guess my uh the idea I'm putting forward, although I'm not committed to it really, I'm just sort of thinking out loud. The argument would be uh premise or major premise, um substance and being go together.
Hmm.
But if you use the word being, it comes together with a misleading idea. But that misleading idea can't be applied to God, so therefore we can't use ousia of God. And then he's going to go on later to say what the misleading idea is. Maybe.
Oh, okay, interesting. But you see, uh, uh, that would the idea uh, being implies or indicates some misleading. Well, can it mean really misleading? Let let's look at the meanings. Because
Part of my puzzle is just that I don't see from a Platonist point of view, I don't see the connection between ani and creation or production.
from a purely Platonist view.
Yeah, but I don't know if they use the words differently, Ioannis Skythopoulos or Pseudo Dionysius.
Right. So, because Platonist, Neoplatonist model, at least, because Plato has demiurge, right, in Timaeus, right? So,
Yeah, but the demiurge looks to the paradigm, which is ani, which is co-eternal with the demiurge.
okay, uh, right. So, uh, yes. So let me double check if paragogy of all the meanings of paragogy is that's a very interesting idea. For some reason, I can't get Perseus dictionary. Okay. You may also look into the uh, okay paragogy. leading astray, misleading. So yes, but okay, but the problem with your interpretation is that uh, uh, leading being as such, the concept of being doesn't imply any leading astray. It can imply only leading astray if applied to, say, to as you say, to God, right? That's what you mean.
Well,
It is,
I guess like the first sentence seems to me sort of he doesn't have any inferential particle yet. It seems more like he's outlining the gist of his thought than
you mean this clause? You see,
no, at ukan, like we'd want some kind of un or ara or something kind of inference.
oh, well, right. Well, that's not strictly necessary. Uh, uh, that's not, but okay. Let's assume it's not. So you don't think it is a conclusion, right?
Um, well, it's right now like an optative subjunctive, I guess. So it's more of a
Yes,
kind of request, like a kind of suggestion at this point, it seems like to me.
right. But how is it connected to what precedes it?
Um, well, I
Because
wonder if we like,
you see, here is if.
mhm,
So it's strictly speaking, it's an it's an if. How it's called? Uh,
yeah,
if clause. I forgot how. Conditional. It's conditional, right?
right.
If this, then that. So if you end, so it if it ex one is we are to expect. So if this, then what? So if we stop this what with this comma, then what we do with the rest?
Well, I was thinking that the whole sentence would be a singular premise and an argument.
But then if it's well, purely grammatically, it's a conditional, right? So
Hmm.
a conditional needs, it has apothesis. I mean, it has prothesis. Here we have prothesis. It begins with A or E.
Hmm.
Now, where is apothesis of this?
What I mean is, if you have like a hypothetical syllogism, premise one is if A, then B. Premise two is A, conclusion is B. So this whole sentence I was suggesting would just be premise one, if A, then B.
If A,
Because
then
for
B.
because
Okay,
for the
so
full argument, he has to establish that the conditional really does apply, because he has to argue that ousia really is alongside being, if you want a full argument, right?
yeah, but
Because right now
okay.
it's just hypothetical. He hasn't shown that in fact ousia legatai he's only saying A, but he would
Well,
have,
strictly
yeah.
speaking, yes. So I take it is A as rhetorical,
Mm,
which is at least, I don't know if it's used in English, it's in Russian, it's used all the way sometime. So
mm,
it can be, it's the way of, a way of speaking
mhm.
rhetorically. So instead of saying, given that, one says, if that. So, uh, but let's see on your reading. I still don't understand if you are taking this. Uh, uh, if A then B, so how, what do you take to be B in this case? Namely
Uh,
apodosis.
the apodosis, the ukan legoita.
All right. And then exactly, I agree with that. So this is the prothesis which ends hypography,
Hmm.
and this is apodosis. So now, uh, should we to understand this? we need to figure out why this apodosis follow from the protasis, right?
I guess like it would be maybe it would be useful to, I haven't read beyond it yet to see where he goes to fully interpret because
Yeah, so I think yeah, but I think it's necessary to have some idea. Uh, if we agree that it means if A then B, uh, purely grammatically, that's what it says.
yeah,
That's
yeah, I agree.
okay. Then why does it make sense to say that if this then that? So
Um, um,
because I think if we rely just on if we rely on Neoplatonic scheme, then we don't need to prove this. We just every Neoplatonist, well, beginning with Plotinus, right, knows that well, at least the one is one cannot, in the proper sense, ascribe ousia to the highest reality, so to speak, to the one, right? It's just read Plotinus and you'll see why, right? You
mhm.
don't need to, you don't need syllogism for that. But for someone who hasn't read Plotinus or doesn't believe Plotinus, such a person, say a Christian person, needs uh, a justification for this claim, right?
Uh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to read ahead to see if like there's anything in the later on that's because I guess if we read a little more, maybe it would narrow
Okay,
down.
okay, let's read a little more, but let's
Yeah.
just mark it suspended that we
Yeah.
okay, continue.
So he says, for God lies beyond every substance
Mm-hmm.
and is none of the, since he is none of the existing things, um,
Okay,
but is beyond existing things and from which existing things are.
okay.
Um, uh, what does theotaste mean in this verse?
Theotis means divinity. It's an abstract noun formed from the word theos. So uh, usually it's formed from a adjective like orthos or thotis, straightness, right? So
Mhm.
theos, if one take it as a quasi adjective, right? So
Mhm.
then one can form this abstract noun theotis from it.
Oh, I see. Um,
So
so
from divine, like in English, it would be divine theos, although properly divine with iota, theos. But let me see if there is such usage. Uh, uh, theos as an adjective, like it's an interesting linguistic question. No, it's only a noun. So, but theotitus is formed as if it were an adjective. So uh, basically, it means divinity. Uh,
mhm. So is it that the hidden divinity of the one God or the single God,
mhm. Of the or unique. Okay.
yeah, or yeah, is a kind of thearchic power, a God ruling, divine ruling power, maybe.
Yes, yes. That's thearchiki is not easy to translate. Um, Thearchia, Lila translates Godhead, which is quite brilliant translation, I would say. But how to form an adjective from a noun, Godhead.
And do you take Pasin is kind of dative of reference with apokryphos, hidden to all?
Yes, to everyone and to everything. Yes.
Ruling the so-called gods, um, either whether they're angels or saints, perhaps for Hagia.
Yes, saintly men or saintly human beings.
Well, that's interesting. He's referring to angels and saints as, theos legomenos, or
Right. It's at the heart of this doctrine of deification. So
Mhm.
uh, uh, a saint is a god by grace.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I see.
and it's a later Eastern or Byzantine theology, Orthodox theology. It's developed. So there's a statement that a saint has everything by grace what God has by nature. So it's God by grace.
Right. Okay. Um, so ruling the so-called gods, whether angels or saints, in accordance with in accordance in accordance with which it is a demiurge
Yes, it is
of
okay.
a creator.
Right, demiurge, but how do you take K, Kai?
According to which is also
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
a creator of the gods that come to be through participation, um, which is ca causelessly and really existing. God, I know what all these words mean, but it's hard to make it English, I guess.
Right. I know,
So
I
it's
know.
it's being like a self god, autotheotes, a self divinity,
Right.
anaitios causelessly, and toonti really ex theotes, like self dependent or
Yeah,
self
from its
existent or something. Yeah.
yes, from itself, right? But we need to figure out what all this means in this context, right? So, and I think I don't think we can do this unless we understand this premise.
Well, it sounds like this the theotes apokryphos does produce, right? He produces
Yeah, but in what sense it produces? The thing is why I'm trying to bring attention to this
yeah.
paragogy, because I think from in the Christian framework, say, or even yeah, let's talk of Christian framework, because his audience are Christians. So for them, God created the world in 6 days, created everything, and then everything exists, right? But if we take it in this simple, naive way, it's not clear why does the notion of existence implies production, because production is finished. Production is finished on the sixth day. Then they just exist. Like a craftsman makes a chair, it's production, paragogy. Then
Hmm.
the chair exists, right? And that it just is. Like the concept of being is used nowadays with us. It doesn't imply any production as such, right? Uh, so, uh, uh,
Well,
but
can I
huh?
so is perhaps the line of thought that the Ani should go with the dunamis that he talks about, but not the theos itself? The dunamis is capable.
Right. That's true. But more importantly, I think uh, what underlies this is that from the point of view of this author and of Dionysius, it is not the case that God creates as it would be if we take the Genesis account literally, that God creates as a craftsman and then what he created is just exists. No, he sustains it in being. It's continuous creation. He maintains it in being. In other words, uh, uh, it's not one-time event that in time T0 it has been created, and then in T1, T2, etc., it just exists and doesn't need any production anymore because had been produced. No, that's not the case. Creation is not an event in time. It's an event before all time, which in fact produce even time itself as a byproduct, as Augustine says also. It's not
So
only.
they're allegorical readers of Genesis.
Yes, it would be right. It would require some allegory. In this frame of mind, it's really, in other words, this doctrine that God created the world and then it exists by itself, so to speak. It's in the modern European thought, it's called deism. You have heard of it probably, that God created the world as if it was a clock. He wound it up and then it goes. That's called deism, and that's not the uh, understanding of relation between God and the world, which is at work here. And this, as I see it, explains why uh, why the thought why being indicates some concept of production, because when we speak of the things that are being Christians, well, if we are the audience of this author, we understand it with this author in the sense that all things are being continuously brought from non-being into being. In other words, for all created thing to be is to be produced from non-being. And without that power, this dunamis, which maintains them in being, which is another way of saying that brings it from non-being into being, continuously. Without this, they would just dissipate into non-being. And the thought, I think, is that uh, because being implies production from non-being, in other words, depending on it implies dependence on some producing power, and that we cannot say of divinity, of theotis, because it's uh, it's now this is a very important phrase. It exists really ex FTs from itself, namely, it doesn't depend it doesn't need, and actually, it's impossible to think of any power producing it. So I think I would take the sky as explanatory. That's sometimes they call it epexegetical. So it's not conjunctions. That's usual one of the uses of chi. Okay, so it exists really from itself, namely, it is after theotis. It's well, as you said, it's difficult to translate. It's I would say self-caused, I would say almost, I think, actually that's what is said here, is un it being existing in an uncaused way,
Mm-hmm.
as which is all which is means that it is self-caused in a way, right? After, well, of course, it would be too crude to say that it's causa sui, which is the term introduced by Spinoza later. But I don't think. Well, we'll see, but I don't think they anywhere speak of strictly causa sui or self-caused, but they use this after theotis, which basically means I interpret it this way, but somehow not probably. I mean, more subtle way of saying that it has no cause but itself, if one can even speak of anything being a cause of itself. But so leaving open the question of whether one can call it a cause of itself, but no, so but basically it exists. So that is, I think, the point here. So according to this explanation, again, what it needs to be explained that God is hyperousia, and as you see, it does not rely on Neoplatonic scheme, this justification. It addresses Christians, but Christians, we have to admit, somewhat more sophisticated. Christians, not our modern day fundamentalist Christians who insist that everything to the letter as written in Genesis is literally, the same, that God as a craftsman, because this again leads to deism, which is quite an infamous version of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, many people would admit, but probably not all. Okay, anyway, so and but if one can expect in one's audience this more subtle understanding of Genesis, kind of emanationist understanding, in the sense that in the sense of that creation is continuous
Mm-hmm.
in the way I described, then basically to say, and then being needs to be, being is kind of an effect of this constant bringing into being.
Can I ask a
Mm-hmm.
question? Yeah, I mean, I think your view is persuasive. I'm persuaded now. I withdraw my earlier variance. I'm sorry if I'm.
No, it's yes, we need to look at yeah, okay, what?
But I'm curious. Like, well, the auto theotes is, it looks like it's got this the feminine article hey, and it looks like it traces back to the dunamis, hey dunamis. So is it true that, or I'm wondering, like, if you can't even say this about God, but you can only say this about this dunamis of God, because if you
Yes,
start saying usa with God, then you get back into the same problem of.
yes, that's a subtle question. Of course, first of all, after theotis, just as theotis is a noun. It's a feminine
Right,
noun.
right,
That's why,
right.
yes. Right. So this commentator, John of Chrysopolis, he tends to substitute theos. For instance, when he says, "Igar tumonu theou theotis." So he speaks as if theotis was some attribute of uh, of the unique God. But
Mhm.
that's not how Dionysius thinks,
Mhm.
author upon whom he comments. So we need to, I don't know how often we'll uh, refer more to scholia. I don't want to overdo it, but I mean, if you would wish, we certainly can do this, but we need to be aware between, he shifts the meaning. So
Mhm.
we'll see that Dionysius himself, he tries to, he kind of tends to avoid speaking, calling theos this. So he speaks of theotes, he speaks of thearchia, thearchia, the like something which again Lila translated as Godhead, but he speaks of it the same as he speaks hypertheos, super God.
Mhm.
So in other words, uh, God is something, something uh, uh, lower. It's not quite it, right? Uh,
Mhm.
Yes, that's we'll see it in the text when we'll read the main text further. But we already can see that you see the screen, right?
Mhm.
Uh, Peritis hyperusiu pekrifies theotitos, right? He doesn't speak of God here. Uh, so far in the main text, there was no God talk. He calls this uh, highest kind of
Mhm.
reality, this by this kind of abstract nouns, because God is something more, uh, uh, something which exists, but not existence itself, right? So it's something already defined. Anyway, I'm not ready to defend why he couldn't speak of God, but just so far let's accept it, just the fact that so far he wasn't calling it God. I mean Dionysius himself.
Well,
All right, so we are out of time.
I read this, by the way, in case you're curious, if I can suggest, I read this interesting book. Maybe you know it. I put the link here on it's on apophatic theology and Plotinus, which is where I get a lot of what I know about this topic is from that. But in case you,
Let me see where it is. Wait, oh, that's interesting. It looks like it's new because I don't recall seeing it.
uh, 5 years ago or something, maybe. Yeah.
That's yeah. That's definitely very helpful for this text, for understanding this text. I'm glad that you reading it. Yeah.
Well, that's the topic that interests me, which is why I wanted to sign up this like idea of apophatic theology, I guess.
Right. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of it. Actually, we'll uh, uh, by the way, just like jumping a little bit ahead, you'll see that there's a little again. Lila apparently likes this. I don't know. I know he likes it because of other studies he made, but here, uh, uh, for some reason I can't find it quickly. There's one place. Uh, he mistranslated a word, and I encourage you to look into it. For some reason I'm kind of there's a word apophainand, who
Mhm.
told me town. Where's this passage? No, hmm, Yeah, here you see it's right before the second paragraph, apapheinando, apapheinito. Apapheinito, he mistranslated it, but in a very interesting way. I think you can just double check. So we'll come
Oh,
to this. Yeah.
apophenoito?
Yes, 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 yes. He mistranslated it, but he has good intentions. I would say you'll see what I mean. But
He says deny, is that his?
right, denying. So deny is it's this is from apopheno, but deny would be apophemi. It's a different,
Hmm.
but the
Hmm.
sense is the same. So that's so he took it. To refer to apophasis, to apophatic way, which is true, but true kind of if you go to the matter of, but not true to the letters.
Right, right. I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. In the he's trying to he looks like he's impatient to get to the heart of the matter, but it's really the heart of the matter. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
But the whole intrigue of this text, how you can say anything of it, and there's quite a few names we use of it, given that it's really ineffable, right?
Hmm.
But there's a great definition by ineffable by what's the guy's name? Anyway, I forgot that his name. This famous who was Anglican priest, and then he became kind of Zen person, and Oh, Alan Watts. Alan Watts.
Oh, yeah.
His definition of ineffable, that which cannot be effed. Yeah, I like it. Anyway, we're out of time.
Well,
So
thank you so much for
uh,
entertaining all of my questions and objections. I had a lot of fun talking about it.
yeah, feel free to just speak out. That's what we're doing here. Okay.
Thank you. Have a good week.
I